Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump set to make an announcement on lowering drug prices. What to expect from the White House? From the war in Ukraine to escalating tension with Venezuela, Secretary of State Marco Rubio shared an update on foreign policy and relations at an end-of-year address. NTD has one student's experience of the Brown University shooting and how the community came together during this tough and confusing situation. A Wisconsin judge is found guilty of helping an illegal immigrant evade federal authorities. Officials say the verdict shows nobody is above the law. And we talked to an economist about the impacts of the big, beautiful bill on the U.S. economy and what to know about Trump's warrior dividend for service members. A Chinese researcher with a U.S. visa is charged for allegedly smuggling E. coli into the country. The case comes after another Chinese national pleaded guilty to similar charges last month.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Very soon, President Trump will be announcing new deals to lower drug prices for Americans. Numerous international drug makers could be present. In July, President Trump sent letters to leaders of 17 major pharmaceutical companies. He outlined how they should provide so-called most favored nation prices in America. So far, 5 companies have struck deals with the administration to rein in prices. This means Americans will not pay more than those in other developed nations. Trump has long focused on the disparity between drug prices in the U.S. and other wealthy countries. President Trump is set to visit Rocky Mount, North Carolina today, returning to a city he has previously visited during his presidency. The stop comes as the administration continues to highlight its economic agenda. Trump is set to argue that the economy is poised for a surge. He has argued that his policies are aimed at lowering prices, increasing investment, and boosting domestic production. The visit also takes place in a newly redrawn congressional district in North Carolina, where state lawmakers recently adjusted district boundaries ahead of upcoming elections. Rocky Mount is the largest city in the district. Trump's appearance is scheduled for this evening before he travels to Florida for the holiday period. Now, the latest on the months-long TikTok saga, the company has signed a deal to sell most of its U.S. assets to a group of American investors. TikTok's CEO shared the news with employees in a memo yesterday. Here's the report.
Social media giant TikTok is selling just over 80% of its U.S. assets in a move to avoid a ban in the country. Chinese owner ByteDance said Thursday that it had signed binding agreements with 3 major investors: Oracle, Silver Lake, and Abu Dhabi-based MGX. The deal will create a new U.S. company called TikTok USDS joint venture. ByteDance will retain a stake of just under 20%. The move is a big step to end years of worry about TikTok's future in the U.S. It had faced a ban from January this year under a law requiring it to divest its assets in the country over national security concerns. Donald Trump also tried to ban the app during his first term, but later became a fan, crediting it with helping him win last year's election. He opted to delay the January ban upon taking office this year. The deal's details align with a plan unveiled in September.
A postdoctoral researcher from China has been charged for allegedly smuggling E. coli into the United States. FBI Director Kash Patel announced the charges today on X. According to Patel, the visa holder allegedly received biological materials smuggled in a package originating from China. E. coli can contaminate and destroy crops, threatening the food supply. In November, 2 Chinese nationals were charged in Michigan for allegedly smuggling biological materials into the U.S. Patel posted on X, quote, "To all universities and their compliance departments, please be vigilant of this trend." Patel also urged universities to ensure that their researchers obtain the proper import-export licenses for approved biological materials. Secretary of State Marco Rubio held a year-end news conference today to discuss major foreign policy initiatives. One that has been making headlines is tension with Venezuela, which Rubio addressed.
We haven't had a strike in the Caribbean basin in almost 5 weeks. Do you know why? It's not because we stopped looking. It's because no one wants to get on a boat anymore and do that. So it's been effective at cutting that down. Now there's been strikes in the Pacific. So the bottom line is that, sure, our goal is to, I mean, what's the point of doing something else? But the change, people want to focus on regime this and this and that. The goal here is very simple. The national interest of the United States. The President of the United States was elected to protect the American people, to protect America.
Rubio said the goal is stability in the region and to protect the United States. The Trump administration has sent thousands of troops to the region along with an aircraft carrier, warships, and fighter jets. The administration has carried out strikes against suspected drug vessels in the region, seized a sanctioned oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, and declared a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving Venezuela. Rubio was also asked about recent tension between Japan and China and how that impacts relations with the U.S. and China.
At the end of the day, China is and it will continue to be a rich and powerful country and a factor in geopolitics. We have to have relations with them. We have to deal with them. We have to find the things we are able to work together on. And I think both sides are mature enough to recognize that there will be points of tension now and for the foreseeable future. Our job as part of responsible statecraft is to find opportunities to work together, because I think if there's a global challenge that China and the U.S. can work together on, I think we can solve it. And there'll be points of tension. We well recognize that, and our job is to balance these two things. I think both sides understand that. And I think we can do that without imperiling or in any way undermining our very firm commitment to our partners in the Indo-Pacific. That includes not just Japan, but South Korea. And obviously, if you extend further out, I don't want to leave anybody out, but India and Australia and New Zealand and all the other countries.
Rubio was also asked about the war between Russia and Ukraine. He said the administration has put a lot of time and energy into helping both sides to come to an agreement, but said at the end of the day, this is their war and it will be up to Russia and Ukraine to decide what they're willing to negotiate to end the war. Rubio revealed that the U.S. has received pledges of up to 7,500 security personnel for a gang suppression force in Haiti. This is part of the UN Security Council's international security mission to combat armed gangs in the country. And he wants people to focus on the kinds of weapons Hamas needs to give up to prevent a threat or attack on Israel as a baseline for disarmament. Rubio made clear no one wants a return to war there. And President Trump says he is not ruling out military action against Venezuela. The comments came in an interview with NBC News published today. Trump also said the U.S. could carry out additional seizures of oil tankers near Venezuelan waters, following last week's seizure of a sanctioned vessel. He also confirmed ordering a blockade of sanctioned tankers entering or leaving the country. The moves are part of a broader pressure campaign targeting Venezuela through its main source of income. Venezuela's government has accused Washington of trying to overthrow Nicolas Maduro. Trump declined to say whether he aims to remove Maduro, saying the Venezuelan leader knows exactly what he wants. The U.S. military says it has struck 2 more boats in the eastern Pacific, killing 5 alleged narco-terrorists. The military says no U.S. forces were injured during yesterday's operation. Southern Command says the strikes targeted boats linked to designated terrorist organizations operating in international waters. Its statement says the Pentagon ordered the operation after intelligence confirmed the vessels were smuggling drugs. The strikes were part of Operation Southern Spear, under which American forces have already struck dozens of alleged narco-terror boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. The operation was expanded after the State Department labeled several cartels foreign terrorist organizations. The designation allows the military to strike suspected vessels in order to protect national security. The U.S. has announced a record arms sale package to Taiwan valued at about $11 billion. Joining us to discuss is Rod Martin, geopolitical analyst and founder and CEO of Martin Capital. So good afternoon to you, Rod. Can we get your analysis here on the significance of this? Because if approved by Congress, it will be the largest weapons package ever offered to Taiwan.
It is, and it needs to be more. But I'm very pleased with what the administration has done here. You'll notice that this is defensive in character. It really shouldn't perturb the Communist Party. It really shouldn't if they're decent people and playing according to the rules that we all have to live by. But no, they want to invade Taiwan. So what Trump is doing is he's handing Taiwan another really crucial means to defend itself. This is about half HIMARS. This is about half howitzers. The former give you the ability to blow up ships in the water in the Formosa Strait that could be carrying troops over to the land. The howitzers give you the ability for close-in support and the ability to hit them as they're coming right to the beaches. It's a really important package. It makes a big difference. It's not the only thing that we're doing, but it's a big step in the direction of containing China and keeping it in its own pen, away from our allies and friends.
Okay, it seems like you're saying this is a good move. So what message do you think this $11 billion package is sending to China? Because from what we've seen, China was angered by this. So what is the message, if any?
Well, they're always angered by anything that impinges on their ability to project their own power. And that shouldn't surprise us in the least. This is a great thing. It's one of many things that needs to happen, but you see it as part of a coherent Trump administration strategy to contain China, and it makes a lot more sense. You see that certainly with the nuclear submarine deal with South Korea that is going to tremendously increase American shipbuilding capacity, primarily in the Philadelphia shipyard. That will increase American capability to produce nuclear submarines by about 50%. You see this in the new posture in Japan, where they've just said absolutely clearly, if China attacks Taiwan, China will face our reprisals as well. So what we're building here is a containment structure, not unlike that which we had in the Cold War, which managed to keep the peace for 45 years. And ultimately, the belief is, and I think it's correct, that the internal inconsistencies of the communist system will implode upon themselves in due course if we can just keep them out of a war.
So, Rod, I'm very curious as to, from your perspective, what is at stake here against the backdrop of China potentially invading Taiwan?
That is the biggest single thing. I mean, an attack on Taiwan would be horrifying for the entire world, and it would absolutely lead to a global conflict. There's no getting around this, because for the United States to effectively defend its de facto ally in Taipei is going to involve blockading China's coast, not necessarily up close, but certainly at the Straits of Malacca and Sunda, and in the Persian Gulf and elsewhere. China is heavily dependent on energy imports. It's dependent on food imports. These are things that the U.S. Navy can just shut off. That won't happen without a cost. So in all of these cases, can we beat China? Yeah, I think we can. Do we want to have to try? No, we absolutely don't. And if we make Taiwan harder to attack, we avoid a war.
Okay, so I guess this goes in contradiction to what the Chinese Foreign Ministry is saying, because I'll read you a statement here. It said, quote, "This cannot save the doomed fate of Taiwan independence, but will only accelerate military confrontation and war." But what you're saying is this actually reduces the chance of war because it helps Taiwan to defend itself.
China is acting like a bully on the playground here. If you mess with me, there will be horrible consequences. That's just nonsense. If Taiwan is better able to defend its coast from an invading army, it makes it harder for China to attack. What is China going to do? Are they going to nuke Taipei? Are they going to just blow up Taiwan Semiconductor? None of that serves their purpose. They need to capture Taiwan intact. They need to be able to break out of that first island chain. They need to be able to build submarine bases on the Pacific-facing coast. And none of that is made easier by what Donald Trump just did. So they are blustering. They are trying to threaten. They are trying to intimidate. They've got the wrong president for that. This is not Joe Biden. We're going to defend our friends in Taiwan.
Okay, Rod, just one last thing. You said earlier that the United States does not want this war, right? Is an invasion of Taiwan even in the cards, though, for China, given its current economic situation?
I'm reasonably skeptical, honestly. I know China wishes to. I know the CCP has talked about it a lot. It's interesting that they haven't tried it. And not just haven't tried it in the last year or the last decade, haven't tried it in all of the time since the Red government took over and created the People's Republic. So we're talking about an extremely long period of time that they have not attempted this, and there's a very good reason, called the Seventh Fleet. The United States Navy is in the way. They don't want to challenge it. If they did challenge it, yeah, there's a war game recently that suggests America might lose 4 aircraft carriers. I don't necessarily believe that, but I can tell you this, if we lose 4, we've still got a bunch more. They don't have 4 to lose. So this is just a bad calculus. They need to be able to work out a trade deal with the United States that supports an export-driven economy. That is how they have built their future. They don't have the ability to continue moving more consumption into the mix because the population is on the brink of implosion. The demography is just horrible for mainland China. So every day that Donald Trump makes it harder for the Chinese to act on these aggressive threats is a day that their opportunity slips away. And I agree with what you were saying just a moment ago. I think the odds of that threat are actually pretty low anyway.
Well, all right, Rod, terrific insight from you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
NTD has one student's experience of the Brown University shooting and how the community came together during this tough situation. More news after this break.
Don't miss our special coverage of Turning Point's biggest event of the year, America Fest 2025.
This is the greatest nation on earth.
Thousands of students expected to attend the 4-day event, joined by some of the most influential voices in the conservative movement, all to honor Charlie Kirk and the principles he stood for. Watch our special coverage of the convention and our on-the-ground editions of NTD Evening News with Tiffany Meyer at 6 p.m. Eastern and Capitol Report with Steve Lance at 7. Turning Point USA, America Fest 2025, this Thursday through Sunday on NTD.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
President Trump is making an announcement from the White House right now as we speak. Let's take a look.
All over Venezuela, all over the world, the Congo. And now when they come in, they have to pay $1 million. And we've had a tremendous surge, and you're going to be happier than anybody because when you go to Harvard and the Wharton School of Finance and all of the great schools and you want to hire somebody and then you find out that, I'm sorry, they can't stay in our country for more than 24 hours. They graduate from the top schools. These people want to hire them. Now you're able to buy a card and you're able to keep people in the country. They can't keep people in the country, and they go to Canada, they go to other countries. A lot of times they go to Canada even though they work for the companies behind me. So now you're able to buy, the companies are able to buy the card and use it for people coming in to our country so they can stay in our country instead of being immediately shipped out after graduating. They graduate number one in their class at the best school, and they want to go to work for Johnson & Johnson, as an example, who's not here today, who will be here next week. They're well represented here. But they want to go to work for one of the great companies behind me, and you learn they can't do that because they're shipped out of the country. They're not shipped out anymore. So your company will pay a little bit, but that's okay. You'll be able to get them. So I just wanted to, it's called the Gold Card, the Trump Gold Card. Quite a beautiful thing. And you've taken in just a few days, you've taken in over $1.5 billion. That goes all toward reducing debt, goes into the Treasury of the United States. And I thought I'd do this before we start on Most Favored Nations. I want to read this because I would have said it the other night, but I was not allotted too much time, actually. You had a couple of brand new shows opening, and I understand that. But I do want to say, and some people say, oh, you shouldn't say it. It sounds negative. To me, I think it sounds positive. The only reason our unemployment tucked up and went up to 4.5%, which it went up to 4.5%, which is quite a low number, but still, is because we are reducing the government workforce by numbers that have never been seen before. In other words, government jobs are way down. And as you know, we don't need 10 people to fill one job, which is what we had in government in many cases. So the government workforce, by numbers that have never been seen before, has been reduced very substantially, and it will continue to be reduced. 100% of our new jobs are in the private sector. So this is for the last number of months. Think of that, 100%. Are you shocked to hear that? That's the way to make America great again, when you think, right? It's the only way. 100% of new jobs are in the private sector. And I could reduce unemployment to 2%, 1%, or practically zero by just hiring people into the federal government, even though those jobs are not necessary, which is what we had before. We had millions and millions of people having jobs that they never even showed up. So I wish that the media would report that the 4.5% is an amazing number. And again, if they don't report it, I guess maybe I'll just let some people go into the federal workforce. It'll look really wonderful. And what we're doing is the only way you can do it to make a country great. You can't have the government jobs, you have to have the private sector jobs. And these are among the biggest hires of private sector. So we have reduced the federal workforce by tremendous hundreds of thousands of people. And that reflects in unemployment, but that will be used up very quickly. And we've 100% of the new jobs, which, by the way, it's a record-setting number of jobs, too, is in the private sector. And I think that'll get even stronger when these buildings being built all over the country, of which they're building some, too, but AI and auto plants and everything else, they're being built all over the country. When that happens, your numbers will be even better. But I would like you to report it the way it is. We don't do the federal workforce jobs. We're reducing that very substantially. I'm thrilled to be joined by the leaders of 9 of the world's largest pharmaceutical manufacturers, all very big names, celebrities in their own right, very, very powerful people. And they head some of the most admired companies anywhere in the world. It's a great group. To announce that they've agreed to offer many of their flagship drugs, really all of their flagship drugs, at heavily discounted most favored nations prices. In other words, whatever the drug sells for over the world, in the world, whatever the lowest number is, if it's Germany, if it's in UK, anywhere, we will match that price. Right now, sometimes it's 10 times higher. we've been laughed at and scoffed at for years. For years. In fact, I was going to do it in my first term, but unfortunately, with the advent of COVID, as you would say, it was not, I don't think it was a very good time to be hitting up Spain, Italy, France, but now we're doing it. So the hardest thing to do was going to be to get a country to do it, because we would have a pill in New York that was for sale for $130, and you could buy it in Germany and France and Spain and someplace. Anyways, they set their own prices for $10. So we'd pay 10 or 13 times more, pay 5 times more, pay all different prices. Now, whatever the lowest price is. Now, the pharmaceutical companies were difficult, but they also love our country. They knew it was unfair. And they were great. I appreciate it. But the bigger problem was going to be the countries. How are you going to get the countries to do it? And we told them, if you don't do it, we're going to have to use tariffs, and we're going to charge you a 10% tariff, which is far more money than the money we're talking about. And they immediately agreed to do it. So we have all the foreign countries agreeing to do it. If we didn't have the use of tariffs, we would never be able to do this. But we used tariff, and they said, is it a threat? I said, yes, it is a threat. And they said, we will do it. And they dropped the price. So what's happening, because the world is bigger than the United States in terms of people, that same pill would go from $10 to $20 for them, which is an increase, but it wouldn't go to, midway. But it would go from $10 to $20. Ours would go from $130 to $20. So we dropped way down. They went up a little bit. And everyone knows it's the way it is. They, for years, would just say, no, it's medicine got more expensive for us. It would stay. They said, nope, you can't sell it in this country. Let the United States pay. And we had other presidents, all of them, said, okay, we'll pay. So we were subsidizing the entire world. We're not doing it anymore. This is the biggest thing having to do with drugs in the history of the purchase of drugs. And I don't think the maybe press will treat it as a story. This is the biggest front page story that you'll ever see. This is a huge bearing too on the healthcare, because a big part of healthcare is drugs, pharmaceuticals, right, Oz? And this will have a tremendous impact on the reduction of healthcare. The biggest impact is going to be that the money should be paid not to the insurance companies, directly to the people, and the people will buy their own healthcare. So we're going to be working that. The problem is that the Democrats are very much controlled by the insurance companies that make all that money, but we're not going to let that happen. Starting next year, American drug prices will come down fast and furious, and will soon be among the lowest in the developed world. So in other words, whatever the lowest price for a certain drug, of which these companies make much of it, whatever the lowest price is, that price will come down to that price. So we will get the lowest price anywhere in the world. If they're lower in England than they are in Germany, we take the England price. As of today, 14 out of 17 largest pharmaceutical companies have now agreed. 14 out of 17. Oh, those three they're in deep trouble. But actually, they've agreed, because I think those three companies are coming in at a different time next week. So they've agreed. Johnson & Johnson is one of them, right?
After the holidays.
Why? They couldn't do it faster?
No, we're going to be talking about Trump RX.
Oh, okay. Trump RX. Trump RX is doing well. As of today, 14 out of the 17 largest pharmaceutical companies, but they've all agreed, have now agreed to drastically lower drug prices for their American patients, for the American people and patients. This represents the greatest victory for patient affordability in the history of American healthcare by far, and every single American will benefit. So this is the biggest thing ever to happen on drug pricing and on healthcare. This will have a tremendous impact on healthcare itself. I want to thank Sanofi CEO Paul Hudson. Paul? Hi, Paul. I hope they have you in some order. I'll be checking.
Alphabetical, yes, but...
Okay, well, we'll do the best we can. Thank you, Paul. Great company, by the way. Novartis CEO Vas Narasimhan. Thank you very much, Vas. Great job. Genentech CEO Ashley Megaragri. Where are you, Ashley? How are you? Hi. Thank you very much. Great companies. Behringer, Inky Mine, President John Michael Bors. John Michael, thank you very much. Gilead CEO Dan O'Day. Dan? Thank you, Dan. Great job. It's a good company. Bristol Myers Squibb Executive Vice President Carrie Gallman. Carrie? Thank you. Thank you very much. GSK CEO Emma Wormsley. Emma? Thank you very much, Emma. Great job. Merck CEO Rob Davis. Great company. Thank you. Great company. How long have you been CEO? Almost 5 years. Very good. You're doing a good job. And Amgen Executive Vice President and CFO Peter Griffith. Peter? Thank you very much. You okay? Fake news. We want you to be healthy. Are you all right? The camera's not okay, but she's okay. That's more important. We have good medicine for you if you need some medicine. One of them can take good care of it. We're also joined by Secretaries Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Howard Lutnick, ambassador, and really some incredible ambassadors, Administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz, and the FDA Commissioner, Marty McCary. They're doing a phenomenal job. Thank you. Thank you, fellas. Good job. For decades, Americans have been forced to pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs by far, not just a little bit. We were like a whipping post, the United States, and it's just been 4% of the world's population. We have 4% of the world's population, and consumers pay only 13% of all prescription drugs, yet pharmaceutical companies make 75% of their profits. Think of that. So we have 4% of the population, 13% of prescription drugs, and yet the people behind me, who are wonderful people, make 75% of their profits from the American customer. So they understood that better than anybody, that we have to do something. That's why I signed an executive order instructing my administration to do everything in its power to slash prescription drug prices for Americans while getting other countries to pay more. And we don't want more, we want this fair. We want to pay the same thing. They used to blame it, remember, on research and development. And I said, well, research and development for everybody. And everybody understood it. As a result, the United Kingdom's National Health Service agreed to pay the fair share for prescription drugs for the first time in 26 years. And we expect other countries in Europe will do the same. And if they don't, we're going to put tariffs on them, and we'll get the same amount of money, plus we'll take a nice return on the money. We signed historic agreements with Pfizer, Eli Lilly, AstraZeneca, Novo Nordisk, and EMD, Serrano, to reduce prices by 300, 400, 500, 600, and even 700%, and sometimes even more than that. I remember when I had a news conference in my first term, I was the first president that reduced prices from the beginning of my term to a year, from January to December, 0.25%. And I thought it was the greatest thing, because it's the first one in 28 years. Now we're talking about numbers that are so incredible. 0.25%. Think of that. I was proud of it, because it hadn't happened in 28 where drug prices went down. Well, now you're going to see numbers that nobody would believe possible. Think of that. 500, 600, 700, 800%. Today we're building on these accomplishments. The companies assembled in this room have agreed to offer all of their drugs to Medicaid and most favored nations pricing. You're going to get most favored nations pricing, meaning they're going to pay our country the lowest price paid anywhere in the world. And they will list their most popular drugs on TrumpRx.gov. TrumpRx.gov. And I didn't name it that. Somebody named it that. And I guess they assumed that was, did you name it, Oz? Or Bobby name it?
We all named it together.
Okay, well, I'm honored to have the name. And so far, that's turned out because the numbers are so incredible. It's an honor. And you're going to get massive discounts to all consumers. So massive discounts will be not even offered. It's just going to be a fact. All consumers will get massive discounts. That's TrumpRx.gov. Every new drug produced by these companies in the future will permanently be offered to American patients at most favored nation prices. You know, people used to talk about that for years, but nobody ever did anything about it. No other president did. And it wasn't easy, but it worked out great, and I'm so proud of the people behind me. As an example of the price reductions we have secured through these new agreements, Santa Fe will cut the cost of its blood thinner, Plavix, from $750 to less than $16. Wow. Where's Santa Fe? Where are you? What? That's incredible, huh? Could have gone to $17, maybe. That's amazing. And you're going to do tremendous business. You're going to do much more business. So that's coming from $750. Think of that, $750. And that's the number one blood thinner. I don't want to know about that. I take an aspirin. To less than $16. Think of that. Bristol Myers Squibb, great company, both great companies, will cut the price of HIV medication, Rayurtaz, from nearly $1,500, $1,500 to $217. And it will cut the cost of hepatitis B medication, Baraclude, from $1,400 to $413. Gilead will cut the hepatitis C medication, Epclusa, from nearly $25,000 to less than $2,500. And all prices are like that because we're bringing them down to the world's lowest price, everything. And these people really are pioneers. What they're doing is so great. And in the end, they're going to do much more business, and it's. I think it's going to even out for them as a company. The countries will have to pay more, but even for them, because of the fact that the world is quite a bit bigger, it won't be very severe, I hope. I also want to thank these companies and their incredible executives for their generous contribution to American national security, because it's really what it is. It's, to a large extent, national security in addition. You can't continue to pay 13, 14 times more than other countries and think you're going to have security. Collectively, they will invest over $150 billion to build up domestic pharmaceutical manufacturing in America. They're going to be, because of tariffs, they're coming in. And I think because of the love of our country, and maybe because of the November 5th election, but because of tariffs, they're going to be coming in. They're building already. Just about all of them have started. They're building their plants in all states all over the country, and they're building incredible pharmaceutical plants. We're going to have close to 100% of our pharmaceuticals in a very short period of time made in the USA. As part of these agreements, Merck will also donate 3.5 tons of antibacterials to be placed in America's strategic reserve. Thank you very much. GSX will donate over 200 pounds of ingredients to make rescue inhalers, which is a big deal, and Bristol Myers Squibb will donate 6.5 tons of blood thinners. We appreciate it. Such amazing companies. Every president for a generation has promised to reduce drug prices, but they were talking about a little bit like that. I am the only one of them to ever even think in terms of favored nations, and that's what this is. Favored nations. It's called most favored nation. We are now a most favored nation. I want to thank the leaders in the room, and I also want to thank the leaders of all of the countries that had to pay a little more so that we were treated fairly. I really do. I want to thank the leaders of countries. And they knew the alternative was not much of an alternative, because if they didn't do it, we were going to charge them tariffs, and the tariffs would have been much more severe than what they did. But they did do it. as soon as they realized about the tariffs. Then they did it very easily. No, they're very good people. Let's start with Amgen's Executive Vice President, who I already introduced, and I introduced the people here. So I'd like to ask Bobby and Naz to say a few words. And also, I'd like to ask if anybody would like to speak on behalf of your company, or just say.
And that's President Trump announcing the U.S. will have most favored nation drug pricing for Americans. And what that means is that the U.S. will match the lowest price of a drug internationally. For example, if Germany and the U.K. carry the same drug and Germany has the drug at a lower price, then the U.S. will match the price of that drug that Germany carries. Okay, moving on. How will provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill play out over the coming years? Joining us to discuss is Michael Busler, professor of finance at Stockton University. So, Michael, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. And as you're aware, at the core of this is making provisions from the 2017 tax cuts permanent, right? So what does this actually mean for households over the long term?
So in 2017, President Trump said, look, all Americans are paying too much income tax. So he said, I want to be fair to everybody. So I'm going to cut everybody's taxes by 10%. So up and down the line, everybody's tax rates went down by 10%. So everybody benefited from this except the state and local taxes are no longer deductible on your income tax in full. It was limited to $10,000. And a lot of people in northern New Jersey and New York, Connecticut, were paying very high property taxes, objected to this. So everybody's taxes got cut by 10%. It only lasted, in order to get it passed, it only lasted until the end of 2025, and it would sunset then. So had the big, beautiful bill not been passed, everybody's taxes would have gone up by 10%. So by passing this bill, they made the lower tax rates permanent, and that's a good thing for taxpayers, and it's a good thing for the economy. In addition, some of the people that complained that the tax cut wasn't fair because of the limits on state and local taxes, they increased that from 10,000 up to 40,000. So those people should now be relatively happy. In addition, if you work in the hospitality industry, I live near Atlantic City, and there's tens of thousands of people that work here in the hospitality industry. No longer will the tips be taxed. Prior to that, they had some crazy formula. You had to figure out how much your tips were, at least estimate it, and you're being taxed on it. That won't happen anymore. Then a lot of people were working, and their boss would say to them, hey, look, do you want to work overtime? And most people say, look, I just worked all week. I don't want to work Saturday. So they say, well, I'll pay you time and a half. And they said, well, for time and a half, I'll do it. But then that ended up pushing them into a higher tax bracket. And when they saw their take-home pay, it didn't go up by that much. So President Trump said, we're going to eliminate all income taxes on overtime pay. So now when you are asked to work overtime, you're going to earn more money. You're truly going to keep all that money. Social Security, which I think 85% of it is taxable, or at least was taxable. The new bill, it's going to eliminate that. Now, there's some income limits on it. So it's going to eliminate that. But people who live just on Social Security are going to get a big break here. So it's real good for taxpayers. One other big point, let me say, when business makes an investment, let's say they buy a building for $1 million, the IRS says you can recover your $1 million investment, but you have to do it over 25 years. So you take $40,000 a year, 25 into $1 million, $40,000 a year each year as depreciation expense to recover your capital investment. Now you can write off 100% of the investment in the year that you make the investment. So that will be a big incentive for business investment to increase, because they're going to recover a lot of their capital really in the first year. So the whole point of this bill was to keep tax rates low for all Americans, and in some special cases, they reduce tax rates even further.
Well, Michael, I got to say, that was a very comprehensive answer. You answered like two of my questions in a single response.
Excuse me.
But let's talk about, besides the no tax on tips and overtime, there's a less talked about thing in the bill, which is it also raises the cap on the state and local tax deduction from $10,000 to $40,000, right? And
Yes.
the Heritage Foundation says this is a bad policy, that it would primarily reduce the taxes of the wealthy or high-income individuals. So how do you view this? How do you view the higher SALT deduction?
So on the positive side, people who live in areas where real estate taxes and other state and local taxes are high, they're going to get a bigger tax break. The Heritage Foundation says, now, wait a minute. These people that live in areas where state and local taxes are high, they're fairly high income earners. So when you give them a tax deduction, you're really asking the rest of the country's taxpayers to pay part of that tax bill for you, and that's not really fair. So the Heritage Foundation has a very good argument, and from an economic standpoint, I would agree with them. From a political standpoint, raising the state and local tax deduction will get more people in support of the bill. And from a political standpoint, that's a good thing. But Heritage Foundation is absolutely right. You're asking taxpayers from all over the country to pay part of your state and local tax bill.
Okay, how will this bill have an overall effect, if any, on the federal deficit over the short term or long term?
So one thing you're always worried about when you cut taxes, tax revenue is going to go down, and the tax revenue goes down, the deficit gets worse. What the premise is here, that by cutting the taxes, giving people more money to spend, and by creating an environment where business will respond to the higher demand, people have more money to spend, that increases demand in the economy. But if business responds to that by increasing supply, it won't be inflationary. And if they're increasing supply, you're increasing output. So even though you're taxing at a lower rate, with the economic growth and the higher income generated, you'll probably take in more tax revenue than you did before. And that's what the assumption is. But you're absolutely right. We have to be concerned with the deficit every year and the total of that, the public debt. The president says if he can get economic growth up to 4%, some of my colleagues think growth will hit up to 5% next year. I'm not sure of that. But if it does, then total tax revenue will increase, even though the tax rates, income is taxed at a lower rate.
Okay, Michael, just one last thing. With the time we have left, can I get your thoughts on President Trump announcing the warrior dividend of $1,776 to be paid before Christmas? What do you think the goal of this military bonus is?
Personally, I think this is a great idea. People that work in the military are relatively low paid, and a lot of times they're not appreciated, and they're laying their lives on the line, literally, in some cases every day. So President Trump says, look, here's a way for us to thank you. We're going to give you a $1,776 Christmas bonus at the end of this year. It'll amount to about $2 billion overall. And you say, well, look, we're trying to keep the deficit down. But President Trump says, look, my tariff revenues have generated hundreds of billions of dollars. I think we should take $2 billion of that and show our service people that we appreciate what they're doing. They're away from their families for months, maybe even longer at a time. They're not very well paid. And in some instances, they're not looked upon very highly by the public. So here's one way for the U.S. government to say thank you to all these people that are defending our country, defending freedom, and defending democracy. It's not a lot of money in the big scheme of things. I think it's a great idea.
Well, okay, Michael, well said. That should do it for today. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Don. You as well.
NTD has one student's experience of the Brown University shooting and how the community came together during this tough situation. More news after this break.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanting to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
We said we'd never give in to a meltdown.
Okay.
And we'd never babysit with a screen. We said we'd never let the toys take over.
Mariella!
Never leave the house looking, well, and never let them out of our sight.
Skylar, come here.
Cars get hot fast, and kids can be at risk. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know. How to safely build a fire, and how to control the flames. But I can only teach wildfire prevention. Only you can prevent wildfires.
Authorities say the suspect responsible for the deadly Brown University shooting is dead. And investigators also say he killed an MIT professor 2 days after the rampage at Brown. And during the Brown University shooting, students were put into an unimaginable situation. The vice president of the Taiwanese Graduate Association was nice enough to share his story with NTD Sean Marshall. Let's take a look at that.
The Brown University shooting was tragic, but it also showed how the community can work together to get through tough and confusing times.
Because the pace of the investigation was so slow, of course people were wondering what's taking so long.
Ian Liu, the vice president of the Taiwanese Graduate Student Association, was headed to the Providence Public Library to watch a film hosted by the Taiwan Boston Film Festival. But everyone's plans took an abrupt turn.
And around 3:52, I was waiting for the bus near the Barris and Holly building, which is where the shooting happened. And as I got on the bus, I gradually began to hear more police sirens. And around 4:22, we all got the university-wide text alerts. After the event took place, and after the movie finished, we sheltered in place around the RISD art studio.
In a situation that echoes the COVID pandemic, student testing and lives were turned upside down.
The exams were all canceled, so there's 3 options that the university is offering for us. One is a satisfactory or no credit option. One is to calculate the final grade based on everything that happened before the event. And the third one is, so if your course has a final project, you can finish it, but with an extended deadline.
Following the shooting, the Rhode Island Chinese Christian Church immediately organized volunteers to deliver meals to the injured and their families at the hospital and to provide transportation for students leaving school. A pastor at the church told Epoch Times this statement: "If we keep focusing on the darkness, we will always feel that we are suffering from it. We will not be able to escape the cycle of fear and anxiety, and we will not be able to live a normal life."
Students who are not necessarily students, but the Providence community and around alumni coming around to give support, such as financial support. There's a lot of GoFundMe and fundraiser campaigns for the transportation. A lot of people who have cars are offering free rides. A lot of stores are offering free food for students. Uber and Lyft have a discount promo code for brown students. And there's a lot of these things. And if you go to the Barris and Holly building, every day there's a booth, a table there, and people have an ID card on their, have a card hanging that says, "I can help," and they will talk to you. They'll give you free hugs. There's hand warmers, there's coffee, and if you need a ride, they'll give it to you. So a lot of this supportive things. It's more about the intention, I guess, and you can definitely feel the connection the community has within and among each other.
To hopefully put an end to the confusion, fear, and paranoia between students and neighbors, police have finally identified the shooter, who is said to have also taken his own life. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
The British government confirmed that their foreign office was hacked 2 months ago. We have that story and more after this break.
This is Pho-licious. Now, what is pho? It's an authentic Vietnamese noodle dish. Pho-licious chicken pho brings the comforting, aromatic flavors of Vietnam to your bowl, and Mama Thu's signature spice blend. Well, this chicken pho is as close to homemade as it gets without the wait. Some cubed chicken, a little lime, and then the magic moment. See you soon, my friends.
Pho-licious is now available at your local Walmart or walmart.com.
This land, our America, built on hard work, determination, and grit. Sometimes the days run long, but hope, it never runs out, even when the food does, for America's veterans, working parents, even kids. Because in every corner of every town, even yours, millions of hardworking neighbors are facing a hunger crisis. Many for the very first time. In this land of plenty, affording food shouldn't require second jobs and third shifts or choosing between your groceries and bills. Today, you can help change that. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, less than 63 cents a day, to help every neighbor get the food they urgently need. Because taking care of each other is what makes America strong. We're Feeding America, not just a name, but an action. Working with over 200 local food banks like the ones in your community, and demand is soaring.
You go to the grocery store, you spend $100, and $100 is a new $20 bill.
Even with 2 full-time jobs, it's hard to make ends meet.
These are tough times, but when we stand together, we become the very best of a strong America. Please call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Just $19 a month can feed a family today. And your first gift can double an impact. Plus, we'll send you this free canvas bag as a reminder of the hope you're delivering.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Because you're not just giving food, you're fueling resilience for people across the nation. You're feeding America. Call or go online today to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double an impact.
I trod on my glasses yesterday, and I had to pay up front for a new pair that I can't even pick up for another 10 days. So I looked for another way, and I found Select Specs. I ordered online. My new glasses just arrived this morning, and I can pay over the next few weeks. This is the way to buy glasses.
See now, pay later with Select Specs. Next day delivery and deferred payment options. Only at selectspecs.com.
This is NTD Newsroom, and I'm Don Ma. Our stories today: President Trump makes an announcement on lowering drug prices. What this means for American patients. President Trump does not rule out war with Venezuela as the U.S. is ready to enforce a blockade of sanctioned oil tankers coming in and out of this South American country. At the opening night of Turning Point USA's annual America Fest conference last night, Erica Kirk said she endorses J.D. Vance for president in 2028. European officials agreed to lend Ukraine $100 billion, but they failed to agree to use frozen Russian assets for the loan. Britain confirms their foreign office was hacked. Reports claim a Chinese state-linked group was behind the attack, potentially targeting the visa details of Hong Kongers in the UK. NTD has one student's experience of the Brown University shooting and how the community came together during this tough and confusing situation.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Thank you for staying with us. President Trump is announcing new deals to lower drug prices. Here he is with executives of 9 drug companies at the White House today.
They've agreed to offer many of their flagship drugs, really all of their flagship drugs, at heavily discounted, most favored nations prices. In other words, whatever the drug sells for over the world, in the world, whatever the lowest number is, if it's Germany, if it's in UK, anywhere, we will match that price. Right now, sometimes it's 10 times higher.
The 9 companies today are Boehringer Ingelheim, Bristol Myers Squibb, Gilead Sciences, Amgen, Merck, Sanofi, GSK, Novartis, and Genentech. 5 other companies struck deals with the Trump administration as well earlier to rein in prices. They are Pfizer, Eli Lilly, AstraZeneca, Novo Nordisk, and EMD Serono. This means 14 of the 17 largest drug makers have now reached deals with the Trump administration to lower prices. The president calls the deals the greatest victory for patient affordability in the history of American healthcare. He says they will benefit all Americans. And President Trump is set to visit Rocky Mount, North Carolina today, returning to a city he has visited previously during his presidency. The stop comes as the administration continues to highlight its economic agenda. Trump is said to argue that the economy is poised for a surge. He has argued that his policies are aimed at lowering prices, increasing investment, and boosting domestic production. The visit also takes place in a newly redrawn congressional district in North Carolina, where state lawmakers recently adjusted district boundaries ahead of upcoming elections. Rocky Mount is the largest city in the district. Trump's appearance is scheduled for this evening before he travels to Florida for the holiday period. Now, the latest on the months-long TikTok sales saga. The company has signed a deal to sell most of its U.S. assets to a group of American investors. TikTok's CEO shared the news with employees in a memo yesterday. Here's the report.
Social media giant TikTok is selling just over 80% of its U.S. assets in a move to avoid a ban in the country. Chinese owner ByteDance said Thursday that it had signed binding agreements with 3 major investors: Oracle, Silver Lake, and Abu Dhabi-based MGX. The deal will create a new U.S. company called TikTok USDS joint venture. ByteDance will retain a stake of just under 20%. The move is a big step to end years of worry about TikTok's future in the U.S. It had faced a ban from January this year under a law requiring it to divest its assets in the country over national security concerns. Donald Trump also tried to ban the app during his first term, but later became a fan, crediting it with helping him win last year's election. He opted to delay the January ban upon taking office this year. The deal's details align with a plan unveiled in September.
A postdoctoral researcher from China has been charged for allegedly smuggling E. coli into the United States. FBI Director Kash Patel announced the charges today on X. According to Patel, the visa holder allegedly received biological materials smuggled in a package originating from China. E. coli can contaminate and destroy crops, threatening the food supply. In November, 2 Chinese nationals were charged in Michigan for allegedly smuggling biological materials into the U.S. Patel posted on X, quote, "To all universities and their compliance departments, please be vigilant of this trend." Patel also urged universities to ensure that their researchers obtain the proper import-export licenses for approved biological materials. The British government confirmed their foreign office was hacked 2 months ago. Reports claim a Chinese state-linked group was behind the attack, potentially targeting the visa details of Hong Kongers and other Chinese dissidents in the UK. The British government says they cannot yet confirm or deny the reports. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more.
British Trade Minister Chris Bryant said the government had been hacked in October. This partly confirmed a report in the Sun newspaper, which said a Chinese group had breached systems to access Foreign Office data.
I have to be a little bit hesitant because it is certainly true that there has been a hack and the investigation is ongoing. We believe that we managed to close the loophole, as it were, or the gap. I know there's been quite a lot of speculation out there about whether this is related to China and so on. I can't confirm whether that is true or not. We simply don't know as yet.
The Sun newspaper named Storm 1849 as the Chinese cyber gang responsible for the server breach, claiming it had accessed information relating to visa details. The Chinese state-linked group has been accused of targeting politicians and groups critical of the Chinese regime. In March last year, the British government formally blamed Storm 1849 for cyber attacks on members of parliament and on the UK's election watchdog. The Electoral Commission said details of 40 million voters were accessed by Beijing's spies. The latest hack has fueled warnings that China could have been targeting visa details of Hong Kong passport holders and dissidents who have fled to the UK. Bryant said the government was continuing to investigate, but said at this stage it is fairly confident that there was a low risk any individual would be affected.
We've been talking to the Information Commissioner about precisely who may or may not have been affected, but though we think that it's a fairly low risk that individuals will have been compromised or affected.
A UK government spokesperson said, "We have been working to investigate a cyber incident. We take the security of our systems and data extremely seriously." British intelligence agencies have warned about increasing large-scale espionage from China, particularly targeting commercial and political information. The UK's cyber agency, GCHQ, said last year it was devoting more resources to countering threats from China than any other nation. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said earlier in December that China posed national security threats to Britain, but defended his government's decision to increase engagement with the country. Confirmation of a hack by a Chinese state group would be awkward for the government ahead of Starmer's planned visit to Beijing next year, which would be the first by a UK Prime Minister since 2018. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, UK.
According to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, narco-terrorist organizations pose the most serious threat to the U.S. and the Western Hemisphere. Our Washington correspondent has more on this story.
When it comes to the Western Hemisphere, the single most serious threat to the United States from the Western Hemisphere is from transnational terrorist criminal groups, primarily focused on narco-trafficking, but they're in all sides businesses as well. So the good news is we have a lot of countries in the region that openly cooperate and work with us.
The governments of Panama, El Salvador, Ecuador, Trinidad and Tobago, Dominican Republic, Argentina are amongst the partners that the U.S. relies on as it fights foreign terrorist organizations in the region.
But the goal here is to bring security and stability to the hemisphere, to the region we live in, okay, which has not received enough attention.
Thus far, the U.S. has conducted 28 strikes against narco-terrorists, 18 of them in the Eastern Pacific and only 11 of them on the Caribbean. But it has been the tensions with Venezuela that have drawn the most attention.
There's one place that doesn't cooperate, and it's the illegitimate regime in Venezuela. Not only do they not cooperate with us, they openly cooperate with terrorist and criminal elements. For example, they invite Hezbollah in Iran to operate from their territory. But they also allow the ELN and the FARC dissidents not just to operate from inside of Venezuelan territory, to control Venezuelan territory, unencumbered, unimpeded.
Despite overwhelming support from countries in Latin America, lawmakers in the United States are divided over the Trump administration's decisions and strategy in the region.
I have deep concern about the administration's legal rationale for all of these strikes in international waters.
So if any Democrat comes out here and questions that, they're lying to you. They're lying to you because they don't like Pete Hegseth. They don't like President Trump.
If after all this, Maduro is still in power, that's the worst possible signal you could send to Russia, China, Iran.
The administration announced this week a blockade against sanctioned oil tankers coming from and to Venezuela. Regardless of political divisions, Congress voted against 2 resolutions to limit the president's actions in the Caribbean.
They took all of our energy rights. They took all of our oil from not that long ago, and we want it back.
Total y absolutamente nos ampara y nos protege.
International law protects us. Totally and absolutely. It protects us. Under the 1958 agreements against piracy, international law condemns them as crimes and offenses.
During an interview with NBC News this week, President Trump did not rule out war with Venezuela. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Ukraine says new rounds of talks between Kyiv and Washington are starting in the U.S. today. And across the pond, European officials agreed to lend Ukraine $100 billion, but they failed to agree to use frozen Russian assets for the loan. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has more.
Ukraine peace negotiators starting a new round of talks with the U.S. team on Friday. Kyiv says that's regarding proposals to end the fighting with Russia. The U.S. team held talks in Berlin with Ukrainian and European officials earlier this week. President Vladimir Zelensky said that Ukraine and the United States had agreed on several documents, including security guarantees and a reconstruction plan for Ukraine. But he said no aligned final proposals had been agreed on, adding that the territorial issues remained unresolved. Russian President Vladimir Putin offered no compromise on Friday, saying it's up to Ukraine and Europe to make the next move. Meanwhile, in Europe, officials agreed to loan Ukraine over $100 billion. The money will come from the European budget.
For us today, this is an important victory. This is a signal to the Russians that there is no point in them continuing to fight, because we are supported financially, which means we will not crumble at the front.
Most European nations wanted to use frozen Russian assets to aid Ukraine, but such a loan has never been provided before. It turned out to be too complex and politically demanding to resolve at this stage. Russian President Vladimir Putin says the move would amount to theft.
No matter what and how they steal, they will need to give it back at some point. Besides, we will defend our interests in courts.
Possible legal repercussions were precisely one of the main reasons why Europe didn't move ahead with the plan. But there might still be another attempt in the future. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
NTD has one student's experience of the Brown University shooting and how the community came together during this tough and confusing time. At the opening night of Turning Point USA's annual America Fest conference last night, Erica Kirk said she endorses J.D. Vance for president in 2028. More news after this break.
Don't miss our special coverage of Turning Point's biggest event of the year, America Fest 2025.
This is the greatest nation on earth.
Thousands of students expected to attend the 4-day event, joined by some of the most influential voices in the conservative movement, all to honor Charlie Kirk and the principles he stood for. Watch our special coverage of the convention and our on-the-ground editions of NTD Evening News with Tiffany Meyer at 6 p.m. Eastern and Capitol Report with Steve Lance at 7. Turning Point USA, America Fest 2025, this Thursday through Sunday on NTD.
All throughout your home, appliances and systems just wait for the worst time to break down and leave you with expensive repairs. Unless you have a plan from Choice Home Warranty.
All home appliances and systems have a breakdown clock, and when it expires, it will cost hundreds and potentially even thousands of dollars to fix or replace. That's why every homeowner should have a plan with Choice Home Warranty, like I do. For a low monthly fee, a Choice Home Warranty plan will cover your heating, air conditioning, plumbing, appliances, and more. Don't let an unexpected repair wreck your budget. With Choice Home Warranty, that covered repair is fixed or replaced for you.
Choice Home Warranty has been a great company to work with, and they've taken care of us. I would suggest anybody who lives in a home not to be in a home without him.
Avoid the ticking clock of home appliances and systems breaking down with a plan from Choice Home Warranty. Call now to get your first month free. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage. That's $200 in total savings.
With a nationwide network of over 25,000 technicians, I don't worry about how my next breakdown will be handled. With a click of a button, my claim is filed, and Choice Home Warranty starts the clock. They do the legwork, hiring the right technician and handling the cost of covered repairs and replacements. And check this out. For a limited time, you can get 1 month of coverage free. Did you hear me? Free. You can't beat that deal with a sledgehammer. But hurry, this offer is ticking away. Once the clock hits 0, poof, it's gone.
Don't fear the breakdown clock. Get a plan from Choice Home Warranty and get round-the-clock money-saving protection you can count on. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage, plus get your first month free. This offer won't last long.
Get your home protected. Call now.
Don't wait for an appliance or system to break down. Call before that happens.
Call 800-983-3523. 800-983-3523.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back-in-stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our MyPillow bed sheets only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings. Regular $119.98, only $29.88. Once they're gone for good. How about our My Towels? They're finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And for the first time and the only time ever, get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get the best offers ever. Quantities are extremely limited, so order now.
Authorities say the suspect responsible for the deadly Brown University shooting is dead. And investigators also say he killed an MIT professor 2 days after the rampage at Brown. Here's the latest.
Rhode Island's Attorney General said law enforcement late yesterday tracked Portuguese national Claudio Neves Valente to Salem, New Hampshire. He was the man suspected of killing 2 students at Brown University last Saturday. It was there, inside a storage unit, authorities say, he took his own life with a gun. Providence Mayor Brett Smiley says the outcome means residents can finally be at ease.
Tonight, our Providence neighbors can finally breathe a little easier. But I want to thank the people of Providence for stepping up and coming together during an extraordinarily difficult time.
The AG's office says the suspect was formally charged before his death, with 2 counts of murder and 23 felony counts of assault and firearms offenses. Investigators also accuse him of killing Massachusetts Institute of Technology professor Nuno Loureiro 2 days after the rampage at Brown. Federal prosecutors say investigators are confident Neves Valente carried out both shootings.
Law enforcement collectively believe that we have the person, that we identified the person, and that person is dead.
Officials say Neves Valente had academic ties to both Brown University and the MIT professor, attending classes with Loureiro in Portugal from 1995 to 2000. Authorities say Neves Valente enrolled in a doctoral program at Brown, from which he later withdrew. Mayor Smiley credited the people of Providence, among others, with helping to find Neves Valente.
But the people of Providence have done what we're best at. We've leaned on one another, come together, and supported one another, and showed the nation what a tight-knit community looks like.
Police say Neves Valente used his real name when renting a vehicle later found abandoned in New Hampshire. This was one of the clues that helped authorities identify him.
So investigators identified the vehicle that he had rented in Boston and then drove to Rhode Island. And he was seen, the vehicle was seen outside of Brown, and there was security footage that that showed a person who resembled him.
The Attorney General also said a key witness helped police review surveillance video and identify Neves Valente. According to police, the witness had several encounters with Neves Valente before the attack. He later posted on Reddit saying he recognized the person in images released by police. Other users encouraged him to tell the FBI, which he eventually says he did. Until then, authorities had not connected the vehicle to the suspected shooter. The motive for the attacks has not yet been made public.
That is not information that we can share right now, but as soon as that information becomes available, we will share that with the public.
And now, the suspect's immigration status is drawing national attention. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem says Neves Valente entered the U.S. through the Diversity Lottery Immigrant Visa Program in 2017 and was later granted a green card. Noem says she is now directing immigration services to pause the program on President Trump's orders.
Authorities say the suspect responsible for the deadly Brown University shooting is dead. And investigators also say he killed an MIT professor 2 days after the rampage at Brown. And during the Brown University shooting, students were put into an unimaginable situation. The vice president of the Taiwanese Graduate Association was nice enough to share his story with NTD's Sean Marshall. Let's take a look.
The Brown University shooting was tragic, but it also showed how the community can work together to get through tough and confusing times.
Because the pace of the investigation was so slow, of course people were wondering what's taking so long.
Ian Liu, the vice president of the Taiwanese Graduate Student Association, was headed to the Providence Public Library to watch a film hosted by the Taiwan Boston Film Festival. But everyone's plans took an abrupt turn.
And around 3:52, I was waiting for the bus near the Barris and Holly building, which is where the shooting happened. And as I got on the bus, I gradually began to hear more police sirens. And around 4:22, we all got the university-wide text alerts. After the event took place, and after the movie finished, we sheltered in place around the RISD art studio.
In a situation that echoes the COVID pandemic, student testing and lives were turned upside down.
The exams were all canceled, so there's 3 options that the university is offering for us. One is a satisfactory or no credit option. One is to calculate the final grade based on everything that happened before the event. And the third one is, so if your course has a final project, you can finish it, but with an extended deadline.
Following the shooting, the Rhode Island Chinese Christian Church immediately organized volunteers to deliver meals to the injured and their families at the hospital and to provide transportation for students leaving school. A pastor at the church told Epoch Times this statement: "If we keep focusing on the darkness, we will always feel that we are suffering from it. We will not be able to escape the cycle of fear and anxiety, and we will not be able to live a normal life."
Students who are not necessarily students, but the Providence community and Brown alumni coming around to give support, such as financial support. There's a lot of GoFundMe and fundraiser campaigns for the transportation. A lot of people who have cars are offering free rides. A lot of stores are offering free food for students. Uber and Lyft have a discount promo code for Brown students. And there's a lot of these things. And if you go to the Barris and Holly building, every day there's a booth, a table there, and people have an ID card on their, have a card hanging that says "I can help," and they will talk to you. They'll give you free hugs. There's hand warmers, there's coffee, and if you need a ride, they'll give it to you. So a lot of this supportive things. It's more about the intention, I guess, and you can definitely feel the connection the community has within and among each other.
To hopefully put an end to the confusion, fear, and paranoia between students and neighbors, police have finally identified the shooter, who is said to have also taken his own life. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
A jury finds a Wisconsin judge guilty for obstruction over a case involving an illegal immigrant. Hannah Dugan was accused of helping the man evade federal immigration agents outside her courtroom in April. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the verdict.
A jury yesterday found Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan guilty of obstruction, a charge that carries up to 5 years in prison. It also acquitted her of a lesser count, alleging she concealed a person from arrest. Her sentencing date has not been confirmed. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche reacted to the ruling, saying, "The American people respect law and order, and that the Justice Department will hold criminals to account, even those who wear robes." Dugan was arrested in April after allegedly escorting an illegal immigrant, 31-year-old Eduardo Flores Ruiz, out the back door of her courtroom to avoid arrest by immigration agents waiting to detain him. He was arrested in Milwaukee on March 12th over a battery incident and was later charged with misdemeanor counts of battery, domestic abuse, and causing physical harm. Following the incident, Dugan was suspended by Wisconsin Supreme Court and charged with obstructing a proceeding and concealing an individual to prevent his arrest. Protesters gathered last week outside the court to support Dugan.
It's important to also, I think, make a presence here and let people know that ICE is not welcome in Milwaukee. So I think that's another reason we're out tonight. And of course, all the atrocities, the brutalities, the overreaches of our government.
Trying to make a scapegoat her, because they want to have free reign. They want to be able to do whatever they want with ICE. ICE officers should not be in the courthouse. They shouldn't be in schools.
FBI Director Kash Patel said back in April that Dugan's actions created increased danger for the public. Patel said he was thankful agents were able to chase down Flores Ruiz on foot. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And just before leaving for the holiday break, lawmakers approved a bill to address a so-called bureaucratic bottleneck that leads to higher energy costs. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports on efforts in the House to cut red tape.
The price of home electricity was up by around 7%, according to the last report from the Energy Information Association. Experts say the price hike is mainly due to AI projects driving up demand. Republicans are hopeful their solution to cut red tape will effectively lower costs.
Think about the cost savings that would come if it only takes 2 years instead of 10 years to build a major project.
In the last round of voting before the holiday break, lawmakers approved the SPEED Act. That's a bill that aims to speed up the permitting process for energy and infrastructure projects. Though some opposed warned about the environmental impacts.
The bill takes a sledgehammer to the National Environmental Policy Act, one of our foundational environmental laws.
Despite the pushback, 11 Democrats joined Republicans to push it over the finish line. Supporters say the action is needed because the National Environmental Policy Act is used to abuse power, leading to higher costs for consumers.
There's a reason everybody's utility bills are up, energy costs are high. It's because we constrained the ability of our states, our communities, businesses to be able to create and provide the ability for us to have power without getting hamstrung into decades-long disputes and fights, going through all of the back channels of a maze of bureaucracy.
The bill is now awaiting Senate action, where it's unlikely to get the handful of Democrat votes needed to make it to the president's desk.
And the Senate advanced a large batch of President Trump's nominees as one of its final actions before the break. 97 confirmations passed largely along party lines and filled dozens of vacancies across the federal government. These include assistants and undersecretaries, U.S. attorneys, and ambassadors. The move brings the number of Trump's confirmed nominees to 417. Majority Leader John Thune said every president needs to have his team in place to do the job that the American people elected him to do. Turning Point USA is hosting America Fest 2025 in Phoenix, Arizona for the first time without its founder, Charlie Kirk. NTD's Chris Bob was there in Arizona. Let's take a look.
I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona, where Turning Point USA kicked off America Fest 2025 today. Tens of thousands of young conservatives have gathered from all across the country to the largest organizational event of Turning Point USA. It is their first major conference without their founder, Charlie Kirk, who was tragically assassinated in September while speaking at a campus event in Utah. Erica Kirk, Charlie's widow and now the CEO of Turning Point USA, opened the event. She honored her husband's legacy. She highlighted the growth that Turning Point has seen in recent months. Other speakers included Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, and Tucker Carlson, speaking to an enthusiastic crowd, again, of tens of thousands of young people. Here's some clips.
Charlie wasn't just a speaker. He wasn't just a political thinker. He wasn't just a thought leader. Again, he was a bridge. He was a pathway. He was a connection point to generations. He was a pathway and connection point to communication, to inner politics. And he also looked at a generation that has been mocked, that has been dismissed, that has been discouraged, and told them, you matter, your ideas matter, your decisions matter. And he would say this country is still worth defending and still worth sacrificing for. He believed disagreement was something not to be canceled. It was something to confront with clarity, courage, and grace. And Charlie loved truth way more than conformity. So this weekend for me personally is laced with nostalgia and it's laced with hope. But deeper than that, it's about carrying forward what Charlie built and ultimately what he gave his life for. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, the mission didn't end with Charlie's life. It's being lived out through each and every one of you in your own way.
The event continues over the next 3 days with high-profile speakers, including Dr. Ben Carson, Megyn Kelly, Jack Posobiec, Greg Gutfeld, Glenn Beck, Steve Bannon, Riley Gaines, and so many more, along with administration officials such as the D&I Director Tulsi Gabbard, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, and Border Czar Tom Homan. The conference builds into a grand finale on Sunday when Vice President J.D. Vance delivers the closing keynote address. We'll continue to cover all of this happening here live in Phoenix, Arizona. Stay tuned. From NTD, I'm Chris Bob.
At the opening night of Turning Point USA's annual America Fest conference last night, Erica Kirk said she endorsed J.D. Vance for president in 2028.
We are locked in and mission focused for both 2026 and 2028. We're investing in states and not just in races. So what I mean by that is we are building the red wall, Arizona, Nevada, New Hampshire. That's going to be very important to us. We're going to ensure that President Trump has Congress for all 4 years. We are going to get my husband's friend, J.D. Vance, elected for 48 in the most resounding way possible.
Vance has not yet announced plans to run in 2028, though as vice president, he is widely considered a Republican frontrunner in the next presidential election. Vance is scheduled to speak at the America Fest conference on Sunday. We have more from day 2 of the Turning Point USA event, so don't go away.
My 15-year-old son, Ethan, and I had a fun and relaxing morning. We returned home, and Ethan walked to his best friend's house an hour later. I heard the ambulance scream by the street, carrying my beautiful boy. Ethan was shot in the head in his best friend's house with an unsecured gun. He had 0 chance of survival. The father, the gun owner, he stored his 3 guns and bullets in a shoebox.
How do you feel?
That has to be the most horrific experience that a human could ever have.
David, would you give any advice?
First thing you do is not keep your ammunition with your weapons, and that your weapons need to be locked at all times.
We come from a long line of farmers, and there's a sense of pride, but there's also a significant amount of pressure.
Farmers have to take care of their physical and their mental health, because what's a farm without a farmer?
Watching the sun come up, that's my time. I can have a cup of coffee, and every day is a new opportunity.
That's cool. Yay!
Don't forget to check in on yourself. Love, your mind.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
I am blind, but I need not see. I know this road is there for me. If I'm really free.
A new round of sanctions announced today could escalate tension between Venezuela and the U.S. The sanctions now reach the extended family of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. The Department of Treasury unveiled the sanctions on 7 relatives and associates in connection with the Maduro Flores family. On X, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that these individuals are propping up Maduro's, quote, rogue narco state. He said that Maduro and his criminal compliances threaten peace and stability. Bessent added that the U.S. will not allow Venezuela to flood the nation with deadly drugs. The future of free speech in Europe is in focus at the European Parliament. Lawmakers yesterday debated a new proposal called Democracy Shield, as well as a recent fine imposed on Elon Musk's social media company X. NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with a European attorney for analysis.
Supporters of the European Democracy Shield say the initiative aims to strengthen information integrity across Europe by countering so-called disinformation and election interference. The European Partnership for Democracy argues the information space is increasingly targeted by foreign manipulation and the growing influence of major platforms such as X. Earlier this month, the European Commission fined X around $140 million for violating the Digital Services Act. Owner Elon Musk called the penalty politically motivated and an attack on free speech. Irish Commissioner Michael McGrath, who oversees the Democracy Shield, rejected that criticism, saying the policy is designed to protect, not limit, free expression.
Far from being a tool of censorship, it actually by design protects freedom of expression within the European Union. And that is fundamentally what our democracy is about, vibrant and robust debate.
These online monopolists are all sitting in the US or China. The only way to protect our public space is to create our own European digital champions that follow our rules.
But critics in the European Parliament disagree. Cypriot lawmaker Fidias Panayotou accused the EU of attempting to censor speech online.
Our president wants to give more power to fact-checkers to moderate social media, who are nothing else than people with their own biases.
Panayotou brought up platforms run by Musk and Telegram founder Pavel Durov as models for greater speech freedom.
Things like community notes have helped to empower the citizens themselves to decide what's right and what's wrong, instead of biased fact-checkers. So please, von der Leyen, let Europeans express themselves freely, even if you don't like their opinion.
Parliament member Milan Mazurek accused the European Commission of punishing national identity and dissent.
Those people want to preserve their countries as they remember them from time they were children. They want to preserve their countries free, independent, safe, clean and beautiful. They want their countries without hordes of illegal aliens killing and raping women and children in the streets, and they want their countries without daily terrorist attacks.
Mazurek also accused EU leaders of fining Musk and X because they don't want free speech. Other lawmakers echoed similar concerns.
Donald Trump and J.D. Vance say EU is no longer a democracy. Looking at this case, I'm afraid they are right.
Democracy is not endangered by too much debate, but by censorship. The European Commission must not become an inquisition policing thoughts.
Adina Portaro, senior counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom International, says international human rights law requires any limits on free speech to be precise, necessary, and foreseeable.
Now, disinformation and information manipulation are clearly not definable concepts. And that means in practice that whoever has the power to define such concepts has the power to define whether you are a law-abiding citizen or a law-breaching citizen.
Portaro warns that EU-backed fact-checking networks will be able to say what qualifies as acceptable truth, undermining open debate.
Once such fact checkers are financially dependent on the European Commission or the establishment, they will naturally promulgate, they will propose, they will advance the policies of the person or the institution that is funding them.
She says fact-checking regimes have already shown a pattern of error and selective enforcement.
We have repeatedly seen opinions labeled as misinformation or disinformation that later turn out to be medical truth or even very factual statements.
Portaro says deplatforming and reputational damage are swift, while redress and getting your accounts back is slow. One stated goal of the Democracy Shield is to prevent foreign election interference. But Portaro says the criteria used to identify such interference are often murky, allowing authorities to reframe domestic dissent as foreign influence. She also warns of governments repurposing security frameworks to suit their agenda, pointing to a special committee established in the European Parliament to investigate foreign interference by China and Russia.
But shortly after the creation of this special committee, the committee began having hearings on so-called anti-gender movements, publicly targeting NGOs that advocate for pro-life policies or for pro-family policies, and calling for their exclusion from civic life.
Portaro says Europe now faces a choice to either keep treating speech as a risk to mitigate and manage with bureaucratic systems, or to reaffirm a free speech culture which trusts citizens to debate, disagree, and confront ideas openly. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
As birth rates decline, Ukraine is facing an imminent demographic crisis. The situation in one town offers a snapshot of how the ongoing conflict is impacting the nation's future. Here's more.
It's unnervingly quiet in this maternity ward at a hospital in Ukraine's Hostcha. In fact, the only people here are staff. On this October day, no babies are being born.
A lot of guys died, young men who, bluntly speaking, were supposed to replenish Ukraine's gene pool. And this is our local population. It's a great pity.
Yevhen Hekel is a gynecologist at the hospital in Hostcha. The town may lie nearly 400 miles from the nearest front lines in the war with Russia, but it's feeling the full impact of the conflict on birth rates. It provides a snapshot of a looming demographic crisis with huge consequences for Ukraine's future, and poses a hard question. Once the war ends, who will be left to pick up the pieces?
When you drive past a convoy carrying a dead soldier, it's painful.
Ukraine has the highest death rates and lowest birth rates in the world, the CIA World Factbook says. And for every birth, there are around 3 deaths. Ukraine's population was 42 million before the war. It's now at 36 million, including areas captured by Russia, according to the National Academy of Sciences. It estimates the figure will drop to 25 million by 2051, excluding territory lost to Moscow. 21-year-old Anastasia says the instability makes starting a family hard to imagine.
The situation in the country also changes very often, and you don't know what can happen in a month or 2. Therefore, it is difficult to plan as of now.
Even before Russia launched its full-scale invasion, Ukraine's population was aging and on the decline. The outlook too bleak for many to consider building their future there. The country will need millions of people to repair its shattered economy, experts and politicians say, and to defend itself in a post-war future if Moscow were to attack again, as many Ukrainians fear.
I
realized that I was ready, and now I need to give birth, because it's a time like this. Men are going to war. Anything can happen. And you need to have a child. You need to have someone else by your side and invest resources in someone else.
Anastasia Tabakova is the deputy head of the town council in Hostcha, home to about 5,000 residents. Its maternity hospital lost its funding in 2023 after it wasn't able to reach its target of 170 births in 12 months. A decade ago, around 400 babies were born each year in the same wards. In 2023, Tabakova went through her first pregnancy with her husband at the front line.
The anxiety, the stress, the constant worry, that constant waiting for that message saying, I am alive, I've completed the task, or just a plus in that message. It was quite difficult. I worried about whether I would be able to carry the child throughout this entire pregnancy.
Ukraine has been fighting Russia's army for nearly 4 years, and the unpredictability of war means many couples are debating whether or not to start a family. On top of that, money is tight for many, inflation is high, and millions of Ukrainians have already fled.
The village is dying out, and especially now the youth. They were simply taken away, just like this. Even my son, one, the other. I have 3 sons. They simply take them away to war. The village is dying out, dying out, dying out.
Aware of the looming challenge, last year, the government set out a demographic strategy to 2040. It included better housing and infrastructure to entice Ukrainians back from abroad and attract immigrants from other countries. Here on the road, less than 6 miles from Hoshcha, houses lie abandoned. Inna Antonik, the head of the maternity ward in Hoshcha, says about a third of the women coming to the hospital have husbands serving in the military.
Every third woman now has a husband serving. They are in the east. They are military personnel. Women are stressed. Many women have had their husbands killed. Well, they went missing in action.
One of those women is Oksana Formanchuk. Since July, her husband has been missing in action, she says, fighting back tears.
I have 2 children, 2 adult boys. I worry about them. What if they're taken away too? What would I do without them? I'm already desperate anyways.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy and his wife Rachel are sharing their stories at AmericaFest, the Turning Point USA's annual event. They're now talking about how their life changed after Duffy became a cabinet member in the Trump administration. Now, just a note, we can only stream this segment on our website. So for those of you watching our program on YouTube and Ganjing World, please turn to ntd.com to continue watching this. And I'll say this again, turn to ntd.com to continue watching.